In this video and some following, I'm going to be showing the builds that I use during my streams, and hopefully this can help you guys get a bit more insight as to how I build. Up first is my standard high-end DPS build. I like using Shield Splinterer, it's like my favourite AR. I'm using 3-piece Providence, a Grupo Mask, Fox's Prayer, and then Dod City Holster. This is one of the many variants you come across when people say like a raid ready build. Maybe not going with Sacrifice, maybe you want to go Obliterate, or if you're quite nervous, you can go with Unbreakable. Typically, other variants would be utilising a Grupo Holster or a Coyotes and then a Coyotes Mask, or getting rid of Grupo altogether and then putting Contractor's Gloves in. The overall damage difference between all of these is mostly negligible. This, in terms of straight DPS, is the weakest, although where it is weak, it makes up for the simple fact of we can one-shot pretty much anything, or including entire spawns, simply just because Dod City Holster paired with Regulus. If you don't have Regulus, that is perfectly fine. Utilising a D50 with Finisher will obviously give you near enough the exact same effect, and then where you're using Finisher, after you take your shot, get the kill, you buff your AR or your rifle or whatever it is you're doing, which will then give you the extra boost you need to put you in line of the normal DPS that the other variants of this build do. In total, this build is actually really good. It's one of the probably the most recommended build I ever actually say, maybe not even just this one, but a variant of 3-piece Providence, Contractors, Foxes, and then you can go Dod City, Coyotes. If you don't want to use Contractors, you can go for an extra piece of Grupo like I have. The possibilities, they're not endless, but there are a good few of where you're able to take the meta and then swap it around a little bit to see how you wish to play. This performs very well in solo, as you can hopefully see. This is my solo character, so most of these videos are going to be pretty much in the solo standing. However, this does also perform pretty damn well in group. It does perform very well up to heroic group scaling. However, for legendary, although it does okay, it does fall pretty short, simply just because things like strikers exist. That's literally the only reason. Before strikers got its wondrous new rework, this was essentially one of the go-to DPS builds in legendary. It worked fine then, it will work fine now. The issue is, again, like I said, strikers exists. The big caveat to this entire build, particularly with how I have it set up, is knowing your limitations. You do some pretty epic DPS, but you have no way to really defend yourself other than killing things as quickly as possible. For this reason, I would argue that if you're going to go down the Dod City Holster route, play around with it a little bit, test it out and see what sort of level you need to be at, what sort of charge you need to be at with Dod City in order to one-shot varying different things, individual adds or including tire spawns. This will actually give you a huge advantage over the majority of the gameplay as well as other players, simply just because if you know what charge you need to be at with Dod City Holster, oh, this is a purple gunner or whatever, or a purple sniper, I only need to be about 10% of my charge to be able to one-shot him. This gives you a huge boost over other players because it allows you to get so much more out of your build, as well as having a greater uptime of your one-shot capability. Don't get me wrong, waiting for it to be fully charged is a very good way to go, especially if you are wanting to clear entire spawns, simply just because Dod City Holster will affect the explosion damage as well. But if you're just looking to get rid of a singular ad, knowing the charge of Dod City Holster is going to be very useful. However, like I alluded to earlier, this is pretty much one of the gold standard sort of DPS builds to get yourself raid ready, but like I said, maybe not utilising Sacrifice. Obliterate is a safe bet. It will drop your DPS by about 10%, but that's really it. Or if you're feeling quite nervous, Unbreakable is a good bet. It will still give you more than enough DPS to utilise in a raid, so if you are wanting to get yourself into raids, this is the sort of setup you will want to go for. Maybe not utilising Dod City Holster either, something along the lines of Coyotes, so basically just swap the mask and the holster around, and that will give you a pretty decent setup for raids. As well, Shield Splinterer, it's my favourite AR, I will use it where I can. However, the main reason you would want to use it is just simply because of the scaling of Perfect Optimist. Other than that, although the F2000 is, depending on your build, second or third highest DPS, it's second for most standard high-end DPS builds until you add in things like Spotter, and then it basically goes Kingbreaker, Police M4, and then like FAMAS and then F2000 are near identical because they both struggle utilising flatline. So they're near enough identical. However, the point here simply is you don't have to go with Shield Splinterer. FAMAS is a very good option, although typically on this style of build, pretty much all ARs are near identical in terms of their overall performance, so it is entirely up to you. That being said, ARs I would stay away from are going to be Bighorn, simply just because it is very inaccurate. If you're able to use it and you like it, go for it, but it is very inaccurate and it's very hard to keep the damage buff up. Eagle Bearer, simply just because the bloody talent, I've seldom are able to get the talent to even work, period. Not even like correctly, it just doesn't seem to work, and the only thing it seems to do is just get me killed, especially going into a raid. I do not recommend it. Other than that, I don't recommend the AKM series. Again, these are pretty damaging weapons and they can be pretty hefty in the DPS department, but they are inaccurate over range, so if you need to do something at a longer distance, the AKMs can be a problem. Other than that, you're near enough sorted to play whatever form of AR you want, but this is a gold standard type of build. So yeah, hopefully this one helps you out. If you don't have a high-end DPS build, I really do recommend it. Like I said though, sacrifice, not really needed. It's just something I like doing. I personally don't struggle with it. I used to, and then I just got used to it. It does take a little bit of effort, which I would recommend people do. However, if you really don't like it, it's not needed. Up next, we have a build that I am currently working on getting rid of. I do not like this build. 4-piece Umbra, all rolled to critical hit damage. I have a Memento backpack, hoping to synergize it quite well with Umbra, and then a Gruppo glass cannon chest, crit chance, crit damage. I made this build thinking it will be pretty handy and lazy, thinking that I can just run in and out of cover, get some RPM increase or some crit damage increase, and then I can just pop back into cover and regen armor, utilizing Memento backpack for a bit of synergy for some over armor, as well as just some passive armor regen. There was me thinking this is going to be some pretty decent DPS, as well as allow me to be pretty damn survivable by regenning armor pretty rapido. The end result is the regen is fine, but I just lack pure DPS, so I'm unable to fight my way out of the majority of situations. Now, in just normal heroic, without utilizing directives or anything weird or fancy, this build does perform pretty damn well. It is quite fun, it's quite survivable, it does work. I just find that if I try pushing it to where other builds are capable of easily clearing content, this build then suddenly starts to struggle. I'm unsure as to whether it's me just being an absolute dum-dum with Umbra and its mechanic, or I'm unsure whether it's just Memento cucking me. Despite all of this, I have not got rid of it yet, simply just due to the reason of there are just some weird and wacky times where it's just like, oh my god, this build is just performing so brilliantly under this very weird and unique situation. Due to the simple fact of I can run into the middle of a bunch of enemies, take cover while being shot at, regen enough armor to keep myself alive, kill what I can. Once I'm at full armor or the buff runs out, I can pop my shield to get me out of cover, get the critical hit damage buff and the RPM buff, and then because I'm running Memento, I get a tier 2 shield, which is just enough to see me through, clearing content by literally diving into the middle of everything. It is quite fun. I do enjoy it, but I just find it to be very, very lackluster. So I'm trying to figure out a way in which I can bolster this. This build does work really well in solo. In a group, it is horrid. My thinking behind making this build was it would be lazy. Not necessarily easy. I'm not all about making things easy. I wanted good synergy between Umbra as well as Memento. I actually really wanted to use a DPS build with Memento that didn't screw me over. And the end result is something I'm not exactly proud of. I'm really selling this build, aren't I? It is fun. I like it. If you're newer to the game and you're maybe running on challenging, this build will serve you beautifully. I find it incredibly hard to actually die with this build until I get rushed. If I get rushed due to the fact that this build has no upfront DPS, the DPS is absolutely lacking. Maybe I could go with a different AR, but still, it's not going to make that much of a difference. If I get rushed with this build, I have nothing. I have no DPS of where I'm able to fight my way out of the situation. And it ends up just irritating me. For easier, normal content, running around in the open world, this build does perfectly fine. It struggles in missions. I have not even bothered testing it on Legendary, considering it struggles on Heroic with 3 directives. I'm not proud of it. It does work to a point. The idea behind it being quite lazy and chill, and I haven't got to really think. I can just pop myself in and out of cover to get a variety of different buffs, as well as just the larger stupid amount of armor regen that this build allows you to do. A tier 2 shield utilizing Memento. It was fun for a time, and yeah. I mean, I even ended up putting Sweet Dreams on this build in an attempt to deal with rushes so that I could just swap to Sweet Dreams and then melee the rushes and then problem solved. I have tested this build out in a raid. It does work pretty well, however you are limited in what you can do. It does work very well as a door stopper, pretty much. Just sit on a door and whatever comes through the door, kill it. However, again, you have an easier time doing things with other sets. But yeah, I need to rework this build. I need to change it around. It is pretty fun. I do like it. It's entertaining, but the overall effect is not what I want. The idea is to be a DPS, and I feel like I'm spending too much of my time hopping in and out of cover trying to get bullshit effects that may or may not work. So maybe just trying to figure something else out with Umbra, or just completely removing Memento and going for a more damaging backpack will be the way forward. So yeah, I don't recommend this build. I just don't. I want to change it, but it's something I've got and I can't bring myself to get rid of it, simply just because the moment I'm like, right, I'm going to change this build, I'm going to try something different with it, or X, Y, Z, it then just performs absolutely beautifully and in some weird demented attempt to try and get me to not delete it, which is annoyingly working. So yeah, Umbra, not happy, but it does work. Maybe I need to have a word with Stella on how he has his Umbra set up. I know a lot of people run the chest. I can't stand the chest. It does my head in. I can get more performance. I can get a higher and better performance out of not using the chest. But this is what I mean. Like, I'm hating this entire playthrough, and then look, just stand behind a Chunga, armor kit up, it's got blown up, being shot, and look at that, look, just fucking wondrous. The performance of this at times is just unreal. And now I get stuck on a ladder. It's like, what? No, let me off the ladder, let me off the ladder. It's just, I don't get it. It's like, it struggled the whole way through this mission, and then just like, in that weird, brief, dire moment, it just went, chef's kiss, look at me. And then it went to back to absolutely sucking, and I don't get it. I just don't. Anyway, up next we have my Pestilence build. Now, the most impressive thing about this build is the game has literally let me name the build Chlamydia. Yeah, that's all you need to know. Coyote's Mask, Petrov chest with glass cannon, Contractor's gloves, Fox's prayer, Seska backpack with vigilance, and then a Grupo holster. A lot of people have stated that the 2-piece Petrov is quite wasted here because it's only 10% weapon handling. I personally find it really, really useful. If you want to get more out of it, you can go for the sacrifice. However, I do notice that 10% weapon handling, not so much for the accuracy or the stability, but I really do feel it on the reload. Yeah, My big complaint with a lot of Pestilence builds, and I do get it, every exotic weapon has its own weird little gimmick or thing, and if you build into it, they can be pretty fun. Headhunter Regulus, perfect example. Pestilence's little gimmick is those darn pesky ticks. Should I say pesty ticks? I see so many people build into these ticks like it's the only thing this weapon is actually useful for, forgetting the fact that it is an M60, which is one of the highest damaging LMGs in the game. So, being able to bolster that damage is absolutely your best way to go. Your ticks do not need to be that impressive. They will barely account for, I think it's on this build, overall the ticks account for something like 22% of your overall damage. The highest I've been able to get the tick damage, regardless of what else is going on, is about 40%. So more than half of your damage is going to come from your bullets with Pestilence. Don't get me wrong, seeing a massive tick is pretty damn impressive. Everyone loves a tick pick. Everyone wants to brag about the size of their ticks. But on Pestilence, ticks are actually not the way to go. Build it as any other DPS build or weapon and you will be absolutely fine, and you'll be surprised as to how much your ticks will actually do by the end of it. I'm able to get to like 1.1 million on my ticks with this build, and as far as I have seen and tested, this is the strongest Pestilence build out there, minus swapping the chest to Perfect Glass Cannon, which will obviously give you more damage. I just like the weapon handling. The highest tick I have seen is about 2.3 million, which, don't get me wrong, is bloody impressive. And then you look at their weapon damage and they're doing like 300k. So you're going to do 2.3 million every second, and in between that you're going to get 10 bullets doing 300k. I can get ticks of 1.1 million, and in the 10 seconds between that I can get shot damage up to 800k. Guess what one overall does more and performs better? My one! Yay! Statistically, Pestilence is actually a really bad weapon, and a lot of endgame players actively hate it. Like, hate it. It's quite funny. It's one of the reasons why I like actually using it, just because when I run in a group with some of my more speedrunny friends and I whack out the Pestilence, you can just feel the veins in their forehead popping through Discord. It's quite fun. Now, the reason a lot of people actively hate this weapon is nothing to do with the ticks or the DPS. It's just more how people play it being an LMG. People want to get that tick damage up and get nice big shiny tick damage, so they just basically spray everywhere trying to get as much tick as possible. The problem with doing that is typically in a group, with the way in which the ads get slightly smarter, you end up suppressing everything, and then the only one doing damage is you with your ticks. And your ticks, in terms of overall output, sure, you can get some big shiny numbers with it, but it's slow, and if it's going to be that slow, it needs to be more damaging. Essentially, all you're doing is fucking over literally your entire team, just so that you can be the only one to slowly kill them with your Pestilence ticks. And it gets incredibly frustrating, which I completely get, which is one of the reasons why I always advise, if you're gonna play Pestilence, don't do it in a group. There are other, quicker, easier ways in which to clear content than using Pestilence in a group, because all you're gonna do is make everything sit behind cover and slowly tick to death, when you could just have a Strikers player that could have killed that entire spawn in a fifth of the time it took you to even build up your stacks. You could have a Regulus Headhunters player which could have killed the entire spawn in one shot. You don't know. However, that being said, it is great fun. Like, I will never deny that Pestilence is absolutely amazing on the fun scale, simply just because I just imagine myself as some sort of weird plague doctor running around and going, you get chlamydia, you get Ebola, you get yeah, I'm going to stop there before I say something really bad. It's quite fun. Well, it's not quite fun. It is really fun. I get it. I really enjoy it. Pestilence is one of my all-time favourite weapons, and I've put so much effort into testing this thing. I even spent like a week of finding every single YouTuber's Pestilence builds and then comparing them in like an entire build calculator and their overall performance. And yeah, can absolutely say with 100% certainty, just build it as a DPS. 2-piece Heartbreaker is not worth it. You don't get a lot out of it. You end up sacrificing a lot of DPS to get like an extra 3k on your ticks, which is completely not worth it, simply just because Heartbreaker only has one core attribute and one minor attribute. You are better off going full high end, utilizing something like Coyote's Mask, and then just absolutely slapping down bullet DPS, and then just going, oh look, yeah, I do ticks damage as well. Isn't that nice? One thing I've learnt with playing Pestilence, unless something is rushing you, you kind of want to do your target prioritization in reverse, simply to actually try and build up a little bit of that tick, which is going to help you out in the long run. So rather than, and I do it, I'm sure most people do, rather than going reds, purples, yellows, you kind of want to go yellow, purple, reds. This way, by the time you actually come around to killing the reds, hopefully the Pestilence tick has spread enough and done enough that it's killed them anyway. So, last on this list is my Negotiators build. You have 4-piece Negotiators, all rolled to crit damage, the Sacrifice and the Gift. You don't have to use the Gift or the Sacrifice. Other options will be Perfect Focus, as well as utilising the Negotiator backpack with Coyote's Mask. This is just the way I like to play it, simply just because a lot of the time I forget that I'm running Negotiators. So for me, having more single target DPS, especially when you're in this sort of situation, is going to be more beneficial. Up front, Negotiators does lack single target DPS, especially when you haven't built any stacks. So if you're just entering a mission and a Chunga comes along, yeah, it's not going to go as quickly or as smoothly as you think. You end up playing this weird little tag game of damage the helmet, damage the chain, damage the helmet, damage the chain, damage the helmet, damage the chain, and it gets really annoying. Now, like I said, I really like Negotiators, but I'm really bad at actually playing Negotiators. I will try and sort of tag and then move around like I've just done here, but it ends up just sort of being kind of a waste, and I really should get more practice in playing Negotiators. Whereas the fact that I really love just trying to tag something and not actually end up tagging it, which is an awkward situation to be in, because there's me thinking I'm sharing the love and the damage and doing all of this awesome stuff, and it's just me wasting my own time. Yeah. However, Negotiators, especially with Sacrifice, does actually perform really well, especially if they all come bundling out of one door. I believe I showed this, I think it was yesterday, in a stream doing the manhunt. There was a lot of stuff that's bundling out of the, like, one door, and then just giving my mouse a quick wiggle, I was able to basically tag and kill everything in like a magazine. It was quite fun. It performs very well. This is just how I like to play it. It's one of the more damaging setups utilizing Negotiators. However, if you don't want to go down the Sacrifice, Perfect Last Cannon route, you can utilize Obliterate, but you'd probably want to use something along the lines of Grupo and Seska. Or if you're wanting to go full-time Sweat and don't mind playing Scoped In, Coyote's Mask, pristine example, then with 4-piece Negotiators utilizing the backpack, is an absolutely beautiful way to go. Utilizing the backpack allows you to transfer 100% of your critical hit damage, which does mean that in terms of group play, it will perform absolutely beautifully and can do amazing damage. This does also perform very, very well in groups. However, you end up relying a lot more on your teammates for callouts, simply just because of where you don't have that much upfront single target damage. You kind of need your group to go Chunga on the left, and then you tag the Chunga on the left and then go about your way killing things, helping to DPS that Chunga as needed. Or if there is a Chunga on the left and you've already got things tagged, you can go, right, Bob Marley over there, tagged, Shania Twain over here tagged, and then just unload into the chunga, helping other people out on the other side deal with their ads as long as you keep up your tags. Essentially, this build will perform absolutely amazingly in group. You just need to be a better player than me, which I can't actually imagine is too difficult. I would actually argue this build performs better in groups than it does solo, simply just because you get more ads. One of the main reasons I often forget to utilize the negotiators mechanic with this build is even playing on heroic solo, you get like 4 ads, 2 of them are red, one's a purple, one's a yellow, and they like scattering. On group scaling you get a lot more purples and yellows, which allows you to make full of use and get the full effect from negotiators, as well as allowing more ads for you to tag. Rather than having 4 scatter to the 4 wins, you actually have them group up a little bit, so it's easier for you to actually tag them. Negotiators works absolutely beautifully with a fast RPM weapon such as Dod-Foamath F2000. You could even go as low as the Carbine 7 with 790 RPM. However, one of the great things about this weapon is if you're a lot more of a slower, more tactical and methodical player, it pairs beautifully with a good few rifles as well. Obviously, I say good few, I mean the few being the M1As. It does actually work pretty damn well on a focus build with Dr. Home as well. So in a group you're able to actually support your team a little bit as well by providing some healing. Annoyingly, the tag from Dr. Home does not transfer with the crit. I kind of wish it did. That could be entertaining, but I also feel like that would be a little bit OP as well. But yeah, it works perfectly well in solo as long as you're a better player than me. It does perform a lot better in group simply just because of the amount of ads as well as their overall EHP and defensive capabilities, so it can chew through them quite well. But overall, it is one of my favourite builds. I play it quite a lot in the open world. It's just fun. It is also completely capable of soloing legendary missions, which is one of my favourite things. I maybe wouldn't recommend going Perfect Glass Cannon with that, but you can. I believe I did my first with Obliterate though, so yeah. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video. Have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.